Brooklyn Independent Television.
Hello and welcome to Brooklyn Elected Officials. I'm your host, District Attorney Charles Hynes, and today I'm joined by Lauren Mack, the Executive Assistant District Attorney in charge of the Public Assistance Crime Unit. Lauren, thanks very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about your background. Where did you go to college?
I went to college at George Washington University in Washington, D.C.
Right, and law school?
I went to law school here in New York at Benjamin Cardozo Law School.
Mm-hmm. And when did you graduate?
I graduated law school in 1989.
89. And what was your first job out of law school?
At the DA's office in Brooklyn.
And you were hired then by District Attorney Holtzman?
That's correct. Okay. In that August, Elizabeth Holtzman hired me, and in that December, I believe, you came in. There was a changing of the guard, and I've been there ever since.
Well, let's talk about the track that you took. What was your first assignment in the DA's office?
The first assignment in the DA's office was we had a crack unit, a misdemeanor crack unit. Back in the 90s, the crack was a huge problem in Brooklyn and worldwide. And the office decided to have a unit set aside just to go after the crack cases. So I started doing the crack cases, which led me into the Narcotics Bureau. And then
before you go there, and what exactly was the goal of the crack unit, and what kind of cases did you develop?
The cases that were new and the way that the county thought and the office thought of combating the crack wars were to do these buy and busts. So all these Brooklyn South narcotics, Brooklyn North narcotics developed undercover operations.
These are the special narcotics units in the NYPD.
Yes, okay. In conjunction with our office, and they would litter the community with these undercover officers doing these deals, and little by little, they chased them out of the communities. They'd move to another community. They were right on top of them there, but it generated numerous cases, and we prosecuted them all.
How many assistant DAs were in that unit?
Approximately 6 assistant DAs.
And you were a junior at the time.
I was brand new.
And for how long did you stay in that unit?
That unit was there until...
No, how long did you stay?
I stayed in that unit, I believe once we sufficiently made a dent in the crack, and crack became no longer the drug of choice, that unit was dismantled and it went into major narcotics. Right. And then I went into the zones. That's when we had community prosecutions, was also when I went into the gray zone.
But my question is, how long did you stay in the crack unit?
I was in the crack unit for 2 years, two and a half.
And did you typically put cases in the grand jury to indict people who were selling crack cocaine?
Yes, we did indictments. We did misdemeanors. We did it all, and we tried cases. I tried many cases. And
did you make any distinction between people who were drug addicts?
Well, yes.
And those who were selling just for profit?
Those who were selling just for profit were incarcerated. Those who were determined to be drug addicts and have a drug problem or any substance abuse problem, and they were fueling it with this trade money, went into rehabilitation.
Right. And that was at the beginning of the drug treatment alternative to prison?
That's correct.
Right. And so the life of that unit went through my first year, I guess, as district attorney.
Yes, it was one of the very first rehabilitation units.
Now, who ran the Major Narcotics Investigation Bureau when you were subsumed into that bureau?
That was Harvey Casper.
Right.
And Barry Aaron. And I believe Suzanne Corhand came up later on.
And for how long did you stay there?
I didn't stay there for too long because I was needed. I went to domestic violence with Julie Martinez.
Sure, it was our new domestic violence bureau.
Yes, so I was able to. I mean, this was the great part about the office is that you really got a taste of everything. And if you had a desire to go to one area, you always allowed us. If we had a passion about a certain type of crime, we were able to go there. So I did, over my 23 years, have an opportunity to taste a little bit of being a prosecutor in many different parts of the office until I landed in what I currently do.
Now, did you opt into domestic violence?
I did.
You did. Did you have any experience in it, either personally or otherwise, that spurred you on to make that application?
Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, I did. Unfortunately, because I had personal experience and it was in my upbringing and in my household.
Were you a victim of domestic violence?
I was emotional, not physical,
Right.
psychological abuse, as well as my mother had physical abuse.
Right. So when you grew up and saw the horrific conditions in a home filled with domestic violence.
Yes, we fled the home many times with
Yeah.
my mother.
Now, when you got married, did you have a problem with that as well?
I did not get married.
Oh, you did not?
I never got married. I became a single mother.
Single mother. And
by
how many
choice.
children do you have?
I have twin girls who are
Twin girls.
8.
Okay, very good. So beyond that horrible experience growing up as a kid, you didn't experience it in your adult life.
I did not experience it in my adult life. That's not why I'm not married.
Yeah.
I'd like to be married.
You like to be married,
But,
okay. And for those who are interested, 718-250-2300, you can get a date with Lauren Mack. Now, you're in the Major Narcotics Bureau, and for how long are you there? And then you go into domestic violence. How long do you stay in domestic violence?
I stayed in domestic violence, I would say, for about another year. Another year.
Right.
And from there, I went to Major Offense Bureau. We had a long time ago with Deanna Rodriguez,
Right.
I think Lance O'Geese, where we did
Jim Kohler, I think.
Jim Kohler,
Yep.
correct. I did indictments for them for career criminals,
Right.
criminals who had multiple crime waves. I did their indictments.
Now, at this point in your march through the office, how many years has passed? How long have you been in the office at this point when you were in major offense?
At that point, it had to be 7 years.
And how many trials did you have by that time?
I did a lot of grand jury work. I started doing trials after the Major Offense Bureau, and we were a pretty heavy trial office back then. Crime was pretty horrific back then.
Right.
Not that it's great now, but it's much better. And we tried case after case after case after case. I don't know, 50 cases?
Really?
A lot. Second sat them.
And from major offense, where did you go?
Major offense, I went to the grand jury.
Right.
For the gray zone, and then I became deputy in the grand jury.
Now, the gray zone, for those who are watching for the first time, that's part of our zone prosecution program. And can you give a snippet of explanation for that?
Sure. What was so evident was that the office would work better and fighting crime would work so much better if the assistants would have the cases and know the community that they prosecuted in. And since Brooklyn is so huge, it was decided to break it off into sections based on precincts. And therefore, the executives who worked in the office, as well as the assistants who worked, would get to know the community, the people and the problem pockets of crime, the police officers, and would make themselves available, and they would have better relationships with the precincts and the detectives. And like I said, it made for a tighter prosecution. The gray zone, I don't recall the numbers, but back then covered the 7-3, the 9-0, the 9-4, and the 8-3. So it was a pretty busy area, and I think over the years, the lines may have changed.
Right. Now,
but we still have it.
The 7-3 was Brownsville.
That's correct.
And 9-0 was Williamsburg?
Greenpoint or Williamsburg?
Yeah. And of course, it's 5 color-coded zones.
Yes,
right?
so we were gray.
So you're now in the gray zone, and then what happens?
Then I was put over, assigned to the grand jury to be deputy of the grand jury.
Right.
And I worked there for maybe 3 years. And after that, I went to Crimes Against Children.
Okay.
And I was bureau chief of Crimes Against Children for 2 years.
You were promoted to bureau chief.
I was promoted to bureau chief.
Right.
And I enjoyed working in that bureau. I felt those cases were extremely important, but also very, very hard. At that point, there was an opening for this new bureau or this new grant or something very new in the office And I made some inquiries. I walked around, I spoke to some people. I went and I spoke to Angela Morelli. And
He's the assistant in charge of the Investigations Bureau.
yes, he's the head of the Investigations Bureau. And Teresa Shanahan was moving up to become chief in ECAB, or work in ECAB.
The Early Case Assessment Bureau.
Right, where the cases first come into. And I went into her office, I was assigned her office, and I saw this thing on her desk that said, welfare fraud with a big question mark. And I said, I think I have my job, cut out for me. I opened it up. I saw that it was this idea to start developing a bureau or a grant that we could get funding, and we could be totally funded 100% by the Human Resources Administration to combat welfare fraud.
Now, did HRA put out requests for proposals for these grants?
I believe what was happening before I got there was that these cases did come into the office. But let's face it, when you're a young assistant in the Brooklyn DA's office, you're hungry.
Yeah.
You're hungry for the law and order types of cases. So you get a welfare fraud case. You may not be, understandably so passionate about it. You're young, and those cases did come into the office, but they weren't treated with the respect that they deserve.
Well, weren't they mostly low-level, single moms who were stealing nickels and dimes out of the welfare system?
Right.
So that's not something would turn people on necessarily, right?
Right. And I saw that those were the cases that you would not want to prosecute, that we would not be going after. We understand hardship. While we don't condone people cutting corners, we're not going to go after them criminally. But I kind of knew that things were changing, and just from keeping your ears perked and reading in the papers and seeing the type of scams that go on and human nature, I knew that this may have been a bigger thing.
Now, did HRA put out this request for proposals across the city?
I believe they did, the 5 counties,
Right.
and they said we would fund it if you were interested in having a bureau.
Fully funded.
Fully funded if you would set up shop, so to speak.
Now, what year are we talking about here?
That was in 2000. I got there in 2000.
And did the process go forward with you working on the grant?
Yes, that's what I did. I looked into it. I conferred with you, gave me a 100% backing and support, and said, show me what you could do. And I believe that's what I have. I went to HRA. I had an idea in my mind. I asked you for the support and the resources, and would you back me on this? And like I said, you did. So we set up a little shop, a little boutique bureau underneath the umbrella of investigations that was interested on only fighting people who were ineligible, recipients who were ineligible for these government programs that were grossly ineligible, not minutely.
Give us an example of what you say grossly ineligible.
Okay. We had an individual who was a real estate entrepreneur who had tons of property and was throwing parties at the Puck Building, and was featured in the New York Times and revered as a great party planner, real estate entrepreneur. He was getting benefits. He was on Medicaid benefits. Medicaid, food stamp.
Food stamps?
Public, yes.
What's that?
Yeah. So we dubbed these millionaires on Medicaid. We've prosecuted people who drive Mercedes, Benzes, and Rolls Royces, have fur coats, have diamonds, live in gated communities with servants who are on Medicaid, who don't want to put their hand in their pocket and pay for these services.
In what year did your unit, it's called the Public Assistance Crimes Unit, right?
Public Assistance Crimes Unit.
And in what year was it actually up and running?
It was up and running in 2000. It began with me and one other assistant.
Okay. And HRA, subject to their review, would allow you to expand the unit and would still pick up the full funding.
They did. They picked up the full funding. The cases got more intricate. The schemes got more involved, more multi-layered. Like I said, they got much more sophisticated. We needed more people, and people were still dropping dimes on people. Landlords were calling about tenants that they knew about that were giving them a hard time, who they knew were getting cash assistance and public assistance, and they also knew what they were doing for a living.
Do you have a hotline for this kind of fraud?
Well, they can call my number, 718-250-3026. They can also anonymously report things to me, as well as to HRA. They can go on the computer, hra.gov. They have a fraud area, and I believe their phone number is 212-274-5030.
Let's have your number again.
But again, they can always call me at 718-250-3026.
And HRA?
And HRA is 718.
No, 212. Right?
I'm sorry, 212-274-5030.
Now, today, let's know what the size of the unit is. How many assistants do you have, and what other kind of support staff do you have?
Okay. Today, we have grown. We have 5 assistants. We have,
including you? Or?
Including myself.
Okay.
We have a team of detective investigators.
How many?
Currently we have 4.
Right.
We have secretary and office. It's staffed with office manager, 2 paralegals.
Any financial investigators?
At this point, we don't have financial investigators. We've been using the financial investigators in the office at Rackets. We're hoping to expand because there's work to be done. There's a lot of work. It would be nice to have financial investigators, and we have some ideas for the future.
Well, in terms of your investigations, you have joint investigations with HRA.
Yes,
correct?
We have their financial investigators.
Their financial investigators.
Absolutely, yes.
And so, but when you began to expand, what was the process? How did you get permission to expand and to get HRA to widen the funding stream?
Well, HRA has been, I'm not going to pat my own back, but I will. HRA was very pleased with the work that we were doing and with the fact that you allowed me to do this with a staff and to dedicate and make a staff that's 100% dedicated to learning this type of fraud and the nuances. And that really only happens after you do case after case after case after case.
Right.
You get into the mindset and you know where to go, where to investigate. They were so pleased with the work that we were doing and the restitution that we were getting back to them, as well as the press that would go out, and for the deterrence effect. And we said we wanted to expand, and they said, absolutely. Absolutely. It was a great relation. It still is a great relationship.
And if, for example, you saw the need over the next month to add an assistant DA or an investigator, or maybe hire a financial investigator, would there be an approval process? Is there someone in HRA who would have to review that request and then approve it?
Yes. Yes, it does go through a very big process of getting it approved. But we have a pretty good track record.
So I take it then that they pretty much will accept your recommendation on the expansion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, any other office that you're aware of in New York City that has a similar arrangement with HRA?
I believe Manhattan and the Bronx.
Do they both have units like yours?
No, they do not have units like ours.
But any kind of work that they do for HRA, I take it they get reimbursed somehow?
They do. They do. They're under the same type of grant, but I really can't speak as to how well it's going in their offices. I know that we have the model. Yeah. We have what they want. We have what's been envisioned by HRA in the city in terms of combating this type of fraud and abuse.
And is there one particular liaison you have at HRA that you work with?
I've been working with Peter Janik since day one.
Now, Peter is a former employee of mine when I had the Medicaid Fraud Control Office, right?
Yes.
And he's been working with you for how long?
He's been working with me since the day I started this in 2000, so about 12 years now. He pretty much runs the Bureau of Fraud Investigations, which is the fraud investigations arm of the Human Resources Administration. He's done a great job.
And recently there's been an addition at HRA, a top-level addition. Who is that?
Yes, James Sheehan, who was the former Inspector General, the Medicaid Inspector for New York State, is now the Chief Integrity Officer over at HRA.
Right, and you have a solid working relationship with him as well.
Yes, we've met several times actually.
Good. Well, let's talk about some of the cases. If you were to quantify the 5 most egregious examples of Medicaid fraud, what would be number 1 through 5?
Well, this one was just newsworthy because we had a woman, I'm not quite sure of the numbers, but the facts of the case are that she claimed to be a Katrina victim. And we all know what happened after Katrina and the Red Cross and getting funds and helping those people. She claimed that she just, fled to Brooklyn and
from New Orleans.
From New Orleans, and pretty much, I'd say, raped the system of benefits when she was ineligible and a fraudster and had never even been in New Orleans.
Why was she ineligible?
She was ineligible. She was lying on her applications.
So she applied for emergency funds, claiming she was a Katrina victim, and none of that was true.
Right.
She was a story about her in the New York Times.
Yes.
Right.
I can't recall the facts specifically as to what made her ineligible, but I know that she was ineligible and for all the benefits in the city that she got, put her up in a hotel, food, clothing, food stamps for her children.
Now, in the scheme of things, the folks that you prosecute don't steal an awful lot compared to other fraud cases, bank fraud and insurance fraud. But the thing that concerns you and HRA is that these people are well off and they steal, a significant amount of money from Medicaid. What's a typical theft from Medicaid by these people?
A typical theft that we'll go after can range from $10,000 to over $100,000. We had one that was prosecuted. It was $350,000. We put a lien on the house. Both parents were working. They were generating income, making more than your salary and mine combined, living large, multiple properties, kids in private yeshivas. These cases go on, and as we always say, it's not, if you'll get caught, it's when you'll get caught.
And how can you say that with any certitude that, as I understand the system, it's relatively easy to get money from HRA? And why are you so satisfied that it's just a matter of time before you catch the fraudster?
Right. Well, it cuts both ways. We're very lucky to be living in a county or community or city where the government is so generous with the benefits, and their main goal really is to make every family healthy and to help everybody get on their feet and enter the workforce if they can. And we're very generous. And the problem with that, that's great, and it does work for tens of thousands of New Yorkers. This system, the welfare system, is fantastic. But you do have those who will, try to beat the system, and they game the system. And because it's so easy, those fraudsters will go into the system, and they know how. The problem, and they become very sophisticated. But with the increase in technology and the computer systems. And if you're out there and you're buying property and you have mortgages and you have a car and you have a lease and your kids go to school, and you work in this place or you have a tax refund here. I mean, there are numerous ways now, especially with social media and Facebook and people bragging and flaunting. There are ways. So we, as they may have gotten more sophisticated, but technology is right there behind them. Now, if we could just get the laws and the Senate and everything else to say just, on top of it.
Tell me briefly about that. What's the problem what law would you like to see changed?
Well, there's quite a few. I won't.
Let's get the
basic for me.
The major priority, right?
Major priority for me would be that to get on Medicaid, you used to historically have to show your income or lack thereof, and your assets, your resources or lack thereof, and that would determine whether or not you were eligible to receive benefits. Over the years, that asset test, we'll call it the asset test, has been present, or it has been, we're not going to use that anymore. That's no longer going to be a factor.
Who made that decision?
Well, the Senate makes that decision. It's a political decision. It's
well, Senate and the Assembly.
And the Assembly, yes.
And then why would they change that? Seems to me fundamental building block of a case.
You would think so. In 2009 and 8 and 9, when the economy tanked, they felt that they did not want these families to have to sell their hard-worked, earned assets in order to feed their family and to give their family health benefits. And I understand that. I do understand that. But at this point, it should at least still be looked at. It should still be put on the application.
And they have no threshold? I mean, someone could have $1 million worth of assets and they would be benefited by this, charitable way of handling people who are
You said it.
in the luck. Yeah.
You said it. No longer are assets being looked at to determine your eligibility.
And is there now incentive in either the Senate or the Assembly to change that?
There are bills, and your friend Marty Golden
Senator Marty Golden, who represents Bay Ridge and Marine Park, right?
Yep. He's at the forefront of this change, and he's really taking the lead, and we totally back him on this.
Do you have any idea if he has any Democratic co-sponsors on this legislation?
I'm not quite sure exactly who he has. I know he's had a joint press conference the other day with Nicole.
I can't pronounce the name.
I can't pronounce the last name. It starts with an M.
Yeah. Well, believe it or not, we're out of time. That's all the time we have for today. And I want to thank you, Lauren, for a very stimulating discussion. I'm District Attorney Charles Hynes, and you can contact my office at 718-250-2300. Thank you for watching Brooklyn Elected Officials on BCAT Television Network.
Thank you.
Watch this and other Brooklyn Independent Television episodes online at brickartsmedia.org/BIT.